Good morning, everybody. It is yours and our favorite time of day, which is the time to go through the Gen AI news and let you know if it is optional, important, or essential to tune into. We have Luda and Tim today, and Ankaj as always. And as always, we have several articles to go through. So we'll look at one new feature from Claude. We'll talk about Alibaba and their use of generative AI and much more. So let's go ahead and jump right in.
Okay, the first one that we have for today comes from Anthropic. So Claude has added a prompt playground to improve AI apps.
Yes, so some help for prompt engineering here. Tim, what do you think about this?
I think this is important actually. Uh, I could argue optional because it's only available to developers right now, so it's not broadly available. Um, but I presume it will eventually get there, and it will certainly make its way through developers to the general public. And I think it's important because this is a big area. You know, we all know that the one small change in a prompt can make an enormous difference in the output. And so effectively having the companies that make the model, who know the most about how their prompts will affect the model, start to give you help in creating better prompts seems like a good plan, or at least the ability to test prompts more effectively.
Yeah, according to the piece, it lets you kind of have one prompt, several versions, kind of see how it reacts to a specific question across the board there. What do you think, Luda?
I tend to agree with Tim. It's we're getting some noise. Dave, maybe it's my mic.
I think it's you, Luda. Something happened there.
Very strange. Can you hear the noise now?
Nope, and now it's gone.
All right, so I agree with Tim. We gotten to the point when if you're using a model and you don't have a prompt engineering playground or whatever your sandbox, whatever you call it, it's almost like not as effective. It takes a long time. So this is an important feature going forward everywhere. So I think for that reason, I think we should certainly put it as important. Not just Claude in general. For when you're using a model, you should get a tool for prompt engineering.
All right, we will start off with important then. Let's go on to the next one.
The next one comes from AWS. So an AWS summit is going on right now, and they have announced 5 new innovations. The most important seems to be the App Studio that AWS has launched.
Yeah, these look like pretty powerful tools. What did you think, Luda?
I thought it was important. I think a lot of people are using AWS. They train millions of people in and give certificates to people who pass pretty rigorous tests. And so the install base is pretty good. And what they did with this announcement is essentially dressed it up with all kinds of development tools that and not necessarily techie tools, right? To enable people to use their powerful Gen AI tools. So I really think it's important. And maybe there are 5 big announcements. Maybe we scroll down to see subheadings. So start with number 1 and then go to number 2 if you can. So go to number 1 first. Go up. Yeah, I can see it there. But so the first one is
it's the App Studio.
The App Studio that you could essentially see and test different ways of putting your application together. The second one is Amazon Q apps and how you could use that, and it's available to everybody, right? Who has Amazon Q. Then there is a developer that you could generate code and the like. Then there is Bedrock. And in Bedrock, one notable feature going down, so you can even, they're introducing the integration with Anthropic, Claude 3 Haiku model that you can fine tune within that. But I think the interesting feature is updates to guardrails that you could now use for applications outside of Amazon Bedrock, which is actually wonderful. So this is, I think, at least important, if not essential.
What do you think, Tim? Should we push it to essential? How'd you feel?
I think important is fine. It's a longer article. It's, again, it's a product announcement, really. And actually, as Luda says, it's kind of a product announcement and kind of a repeat of things they've already had. And as we know, AWS is playing serious catch up here. So this is a good catch up post, is what it is. Okay, they're starting to get some things out. How they actually work in practice, as we recall, Q did not have a very auspicious debut. Is it better now? Maybe, but I agree. The one thing that caught with Luda, the one thing that did catch my eye was the update to guardrails and the fact that you could use it beyond Bedrock, which is their managed service. So that caught my attention. And the other things look great, but they're product announcements, so we'll see how it goes. I think it's important because it's Amazon. And Amazon, in particular, because they're so tightly tied to Claude, they're going to be a major force eventually. They're just still way behind, in my opinion, where Google and Meta and OpenAI and Microsoft are.
And remind me, how does Q fit into Bedrock? I think they're.
Q is not part of Bedrock. Bedrock is their managed service environment. If you don't want to host your own models, if you don't want to do anything, Q is their, as close as they've got, equivalent to ChatGPT. So it's a chatbot agent that you can ask questions of, basically.
Okay, I feel like we have talked about them. So
they broadened it because they also now have Q for developers. So Q is a brand now as much as it's a thing, but it generally refers to the non-managed services, more end-user facing tools.
All right, got it. All right, so we'll mark a second important on this one. I mean, Amazon, they might be a little bit behind, but I just feel like they're a sleeper, really, because just the fact that they are heavily invested into Claude, which is really kind of climbing up.
They're going to do fine in this, but relatively speaking, in the pace of the things have gone so far, they're behind. They're clearly way behind. But yes, they're a powerful player. They, as with Microsoft and Google, they have so much money that they're able to just plunk down, $6 billion on Anthropic. So yeah, that makes them a player in the game in one stroke of the pen, as they say. And now they're starting to make that more powerful by more closely integrating Anthropic with their tools and things. So yeah, I think, and they have data sets that nobody else has. So the other thing is, I expect Amazon will be a major player. I've expected it by now. So they're behind my timetable. I just don't know what's holding them up. But companies are big and complicated, and sometimes they do better than others.
Yeah, so they have a big install base and data is on them, right? A lot of data is on them. So I agree with Tim that that people will start using these tools and it will accelerate. So, but Amazon is a distributed company, so they can, but they are not edicting, I think, the development of this as much. So maybe that's what's holding them back.
Got it. All right, we will mark this one as important. Let's pull up our next article.
Okay, the next one comes from Alibaba, and it lays out how GenAI tools have driven 30% increase in e-commerce orders.
Yeah, which was not true, actually. Let's just put that on the table now, that headline. So this was originally a Wall Street Journal article, but I assume Akash pulled up from payments.com so that it's accessible to all of our readers of the newsletter. Some folks don't have a Wall Street Journal subscription, so we try to pull up a free one when we can. I went back to the original article, and even if you read this one, it's that their internal testing showed that this could raise 30%. So this is the stat is not true, but besides that, what did we think about this one? Tim, what do you think?
Well, I think it's optional. Alibaba is a pretty important company that most people have never heard of because the bulk of their business is in China, and again, they're kind of the Amazon of China at one level. So they're not that large, but they're big enough that they've got lots of money and can easily plow money into building foundation models, which they have. But this is their international part of their business, which is minuscule. So great, if they improve it by 30%, awesome. It'll be interesting to see. As you said, it's not really a 30% improvement. It's a projected 30% improvement. It's really an announcement and of what's really a pretty small business and a small business relative to Alibaba. So could be important in the future, but optional today.
Yeah, I agree. When you read it closely, it actually says what they're doing is translating and marketing new products so that there are tons of in China internationally. So I'm not surprised that you might be getting 30% increase in revenue or whatever in e-commerce because you're offering new products and doing a reasonable job at marketing. So optional for me for sure.
All right, optional it is. Let's go on.
In fact, I would add that any retailer that has any aspirations to be global that is not offering translation is already behind.
Oh, yeah. So in some sense, they might be behind actually doing this.
Good point. Good point. All right, optional it is. Let's see what AMD is doing here.
So the next one comes from AMD, and AMD has acquired Silo AI. It's an AI lab, and AMD wants to make sure that it floods the market with AI, AMD supported LLM model.
Right. So this is a Silo AI is out of Western Europe, I believe. What did we think about this one? Who had this one? Tim.
I think this is optional for the AI leader. It's interesting, but I think it's optional for the AI leader. This is, if you're interested in how to make yourself very wealthy in a short period of time, this is an excellent one to read because this is a company that basically targeted large language models developed on AMD metal, AMD hardware chips. And lo and behold, AMD bought them for a lot of money. It's good work if you can get it, as they say. And I think AMD again is playing catch up in the biggest way. This is not like Amazon compared to Microsoft. I mean, I don't know what the shares are, but AMD has a minuscule share of the AI chip market at this point, although it's growing. And so they're just trying to do everything they can to keep up with NVIDIA, which is just running the table still right now. And so NVIDIA has long had its own models and offer those models for various purposes tightly integrated to their own chips. So this is like, okay, we better do something here. Let's go buy this company that already has an LLM on our chips, and we'll see if we can at least have something to put on our price list that says the same or something similar to what NVIDIA has already been selling for quite some time. So optional.
So optional. Luda, how about you?
Yeah, optional. But I think it's interesting that they bought at the last paragraph in this article says that they bought 2 companies in 23 and then invested 125 million in dozen AI startups. So they're really on it to try to put together the functionality, at least, to be able to compete. The problem is integration. as Tim and I know, and in large companies, this type of integration is not easy. So for them to get that all put together into a platform might take some time. But AMD is very capable. I agree with Tim. They will certainly be a player in this space.
Yeah, isn't the AMD CEO the cousin of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang and NVIDIA? They are, I believe, they're related.
I don't know.
Could be. I have no idea. But
I think
it doesn't matter. Again, the question is whether they can use this to make even a modest dent in NVIDIA's market share, because nobody's been able to so far. We'll see. Again, I view chips ultimately as tulips. If you remember the tulip problem in hundreds of years ago, at the end of the day, somebody will solve the chip problem. But that could be 10 years from now with the rate of demand they have. So the other famous saying in economics from John Maynard Keynes is, in the long run, we're all dead. So you have to be careful what your time horizon is, but there will be a glut of chips at some point, in my opinion. But it could be a decade before that happens. And AMD right now, nobody's been able to catch up. Nobody's been able to make enough chips to make a dent in the backlog, and nobody has been able to make a dent in NVIDIA's stranglehold on the AI marketplace.
Yeah.
This is true. All right, we'll go optional on this one because keep this moving.
Okay, the next one that we have comes from an AI startup, Hebia. So they are operating in the financial services space. They have raised $130 million at a valuation of 700 million, but they only have revenue of 13 million.
Yeah, the detail in this article is sparse. It's mostly talking about valuations of startups, and I honestly did not have time to go check out Hebia, so I don't know a ton about them. But toss up here, Tim, Luda, either of you want to jump in?
Yeah. So I think it's optional. However, you're right, David. It's about valuations, and in that sense, you might want to highlight it in the newsletter. It is important because they look at so it's profitable revenue. 13 million of profitable revenue is not shabby, and so but the valuation is 50x plus on that profitable revenue. So and that's what they got for 54x. So this is interesting, and that essentially puts a stake in the ground on what startups that can have a little bit of revenue. That's what they should be expecting if they're in the hot market. So this is optional, but very interesting from the valuation point of view.
Yeah, what do you think, Tim?
Yeah, I think it's optional. Having been a founder, well, not a founder, but a very early employee at an internet company in the late 90s, and we were a profitable company, highly profitable, in fact. And at our absolute peak, we were trading at 35x. So 35 times sales or 35 times revenue, which, and I had some experience in finance. There's a term for that. We call it insane. Okay. In fact, most companies are lucky if they get a single digit multiplier on their sales, like 3 or 4. So the fact that these companies are now getting twice what profitable internet startups were getting in the late 90s shows you how extended the valuations are. And, these are just like this, right? It's like everybody agrees we're going to do 50 times or 60 times sales now. And so 50 or 60 times sales becomes what Danny Kahneman, in one of the best books ever you should all read, called Thinking Fast and Slow, calls anchoring. So somebody just gets that number out there that, yeah, we think these companies are worth 50x sales. That becomes the norm. And so now every time somebody goes to do a valuation, if they've got any revenue at all, if they've got 10 million in revenue, they can claim a $500 million valuation. By that logic, OpenAI is nearly $1 trillion company already. So it's just insane. And at some point, the piper will get paid. But as we were talking about on the last article, And another great investor saying, I think also from Keynes, is the market can remain irrational longer than most investors can remain solvent. So you have to take these things seriously, because the venture capitalists don't care. They just care if they get out at a profit. So this is called the greater fool theory, right? Then we just saw, AMD bought this little tiny company for several $100 million, and people are routinely raising hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's an insane market right now. It will eventually get its comeuppance. Some companies will do great, but a lot of companies will find out that these valuations are way, way beyond what they're actually worth.
Yeah, good summary, Tim. And interestingly, I don't want to belittle what they're doing, but it's very simple. They are taking long documents like SEC filings, which are very long and very
Yeah,
times
they're doing asset management, financial analysis, right?
So
which is easy. And again, that's why these companies can succeed, because even at these ridiculous valuations, because they don't have to go public and eventually grow into it. They can just sell themselves to.
But it is a needed service. When you take a lot of SEC docs and put it in a table so that you compare this asset to the other assets in terms of the performance, it's a valuable service. That's why that's the revenue. But in terms of Gen AI, it's a simple thing. So not anybody, but not many people can do that type of marketing.
Right. And I expect that's the problem, right? So if they get out quickly, as we've seen with Gen AI applications, they have almost immediate return. So if you're a financial analyst at an asset manager and you have, 50 SEC reports to read today that are all in 6-point and 100 pages long, the ability to turn that into meaningful data in a couple of minutes is enormously valuable. So that's what they're selling to, right? However, anybody else can do that. You can do that with Claude today or OpenAI. You don't need, their tool is a little bit specialized and just enough that it's apparently convincing asset managers that it's worth using. And but again, somebody's gonna either another startup or one of the financial asset information companies, Thomson Reuters or somebody like that, will just build this thing into their platform. This will eventually get absorbed into the ethereum and become part of the basic foundation for financial analysis tools.
Yeah,
so I don't think it'll last, but these guys are having a great time.
Yeah, I think they should sell. They shouldn't be raising the round. They should be selling at these multiples. So, but anyway, optional.
Did note that while the founder of this is known to be a whiz kid, it said he worked at NASA and as a teenager. It does say he's not a business person. So maybe
fun right now.
All right, great discussion, guys. We got one more article here from my former employer.
David. So the last one is from McKinsey, and it talks about or provides a technical guide to scaling Gen AI.
All right, I feel like they overstate the technical guide in this, but it does get deeper than their articles typically do, because they're typically CEO audience kind of focused. What did you think, Luda?
Oh, I was very excited about when I saw the title of this article. I said, oh, that's interesting. And then I said, oh my God, no, it's optional. So you're right that they go a little deeper than normal, but they're going enough detail to maybe hook the reader and then say, if you don't know what you're doing in this space, we are the answer. So it's a totally marketing piece. And if you are really not sure what to do and how to solve your data, they don't give you any advice. Same in the other pieces of this article. There's no real advice per se. Nothing new. I'm totally optional. I was very disappointed in this article.
All right. The case where the headline was really good, but maybe did not reflect with the article. Did you have anything better to feel about it, Tim?
Well, no, not really. I think it's a almost, you don't use this word with McKinsey very often. It's almost a shill kind of article, because it's like the solution to everything is Gen AI. And it's like, well, okay. So I would say if this is your second day as an AI leader and your background is in logistics, this is a good article for you. Because at least gives you the landscape of where the piece parts are. But as Luda said, it doesn't actually tell you anything about any of those piece parts, other than there's lots of monsters out there, and Gen AI will help you tame them.
And McKinsey Services is the answer. Come to us.
Yeah.
And actually, this is the point of thought leadership, exactly what you're stating, but they could get a little bit deeper on this. Actually, I know several of the authors on this, and they are actually very knowledgeable folks.
I'm sure they are.
Some of the people that I actually enjoyed creating thought leadership with most, but yeah.
But usually thought leadership is a little more subtle, and the way you're a little more subtle is by adding a little more depth to the prose. This one really comes across as, have I got an answer for you?
Really, they're missing
Follow me to this little back alley. I've got a great set of watches here in my
yes. This is actually what I would attribute this laziness to whoever the editor was on this, because you got to push hard to get to the meat with these guys, because they do have it. And I think the pushing didn't quite go so far on this one. But
need to defend them. And we know that you have a sore spot on that. It's okay.
That's right. All right. How do we do, Kaj?
Yes, coming your way.
I recall at least two importance, but we made, yes, first two. We started off with two importance, and then we ended up with 4 optional. So important is the Claude prompt engineering assistance that they've added to the Claude product, and AWS's upgrades, or in some cases just re-announcements of things that they had, but they're moving, and the rest of it was optional. Thanks everybody today for a great discussion, and thanks everyone for watching. And as usual, you can get our newsletter by signing up where you signed up to watch this briefing, and please do subscribe to our YouTube, and do look at our conference tickets on GAIinsights.com, because they do sell quickly. I know it seems far in advance. It's in October 7th and 8th, but we're already selling a lot of tickets, and we have limited spots. So do check that out, and we hope to see you there, and we will definitely see you tomorrow for the last show of the week. Have a good day, everybody.